Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create film courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview film professionals, and this week I'm joined by Lynne Willingham, whose work includes Breaking Bad, X-Files, and she's currently working on American Gigolo, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Lynne.
Hi, how are you?
Now, I have to ask a question that if I don't ask, my mother will kill me.
Okay.
Tell me anything you can tell me about working on The Commish.
Oh my gosh.
That was her favorite show.
Well, I didn't do the series Commish, but we had 3 or 4 movies afterwards that we did. And this isn't going to be very interesting for your mother. First of all, it was a wonderful show. It was Michael Chiklis is an amazing actor. The producers were terrific. So it was a fun project. But we were the very last shows on Ediflex in Los Angeles.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we had 3 because the company that produced this was Stephen Cannell, and he had bought like 30, 40, 50, 100 Ediflex at the time. And we had 7 shows on, so 21 editors and a whole sound team that was part of the studio, et cetera. And when Cannell sold to, I think it was New Line or New World, I can't remember which, all the equipment was gone except for 3 Ediflex. And we had 6 movies, I think, or 4 movies of the Commish that we did. And as we burned each Ediflex out, we'd move to the next one because there was no technical support. So we burned out all of them at the very end. And that was the end of Ediflex, as far as I know.
Just so I know, Ediflex is like one of the early
Ediflex was a non-linear editing system, but it was based on videotapes. So you had a dozen videotapes at any time queuing up the next cut. It was very advanced for its time and a really solid machine. But you know, when you see what we can do now, you would have to wait. If you had an action sequence and you had more than 12 cuts, you could run 12 cuts and then you'd have to wait for them all to reload. So it wasn't ideal, but it worked.
Wow. And I heard of like a similar system called Montage, I think it was called. And it did something similar where it was calling up information from decks.
Yeah, Montage was similar. I didn't work on it. They did a lot of movies on Montage, I think, but not as much television.
Wow. Now, tell me about, because you've done a lot of pilots. So what is it about pilots that you like to take on, or what are the challenges that interest you when you're taking on a pilot?
Well, the challenge is that you don't know the show. So the challenge is to hook the audience into caring about the people that they don't know yet. So you got to grab them pretty much right away. It's fun because you're creating a world for these, you know, you're helping the director and the writer create a world for this brand new, you know, entity. And that's really fun because you have a lot of creative input. If you're lucky enough to be working with, you know, people who value what you're bringing to the table. Generally, when you do a pilot, people who hire you really want to know what you think. They're not just hiring someone to be a pair of hands, which in the past so many of us have been used as, and they really want to know what you think. And a lot of times the director is so busy that if you have a good rapport with them and they trust you, you can run with a lot of things they may or may not have intended, and sort of helps out set a style for a pilot. And I haven't done all that many. I did Claws and I did Breaking Bad. I don't know that I've done too many others, actually, but they're very hard. because there's so much pressure on the creative team to sell the pilot. So, you know, now it's a little different, I think, because, excuse me, because when you do a pilot now, it's usually they've bought the whole series already.
Yeah.
You know, they'll go right to series. Apple does this, I think. They did that with C. They really didn't have a pilot. They went first episode, which they called the pilot, and right into a whole series. So you're not waiting for somebody to say, yeah, we'll buy it. You're just trying to deliver the best product to them, so that the studio or network or whoever the money entities are feel good about the fact that they're investing in this project. But I don't find that there's a pilot season anymore. There's no, we have to wait and see if we're going to be picked up on most of these, because most of these are pretty much a done deal. If they're going to invest that much in the pilot, they're probably going on with the series.
That's gotta be really freeing as an editor, because like all of a sudden it's got to be freeing for you and the creative team then to not have that pressure.
There's still a lot of pressure, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've found with studios, they're still extremely involved in what you're doing. They'll have a lot of things that they might want to do before or after you've shot or cut or delivered film. So there's still a lot of pressure for the creative team. The couple of projects I've done, I think Claws was pre-bought, possibly. Breaking Bad wasn't, though. I mean, Breaking Bad was not a done deal. And that was, a delight for everybody. Yeah. So I don't know. Those are the only two experiences I have with it. I have way, way, way more experience with series that have been on for, I tend to stick with a project for a long time.
Yeah.
With Ray Donovan, I was on it for the entire run, including the movie, which was super fun because we'd walked away from our characters for 2 years. We came back and tried to wrap up in one movie what a season should have done. And, I think we delivered a really good show. So, yeah.
No, for Breaking Bad, because in the pilot, you're trying to find the tone, you're trying to get everything to work. Was there anything that changed drastically in the pilot for Breaking Bad?
The interesting thing about the pilot, because I'm sure you've probably spoken with Vince Gilligan before, he's brilliant. Mm-hmm. And he'd been writing this story in his head for years. So he knew exactly what he wanted to do. And he is a person that if you ever get a chance to look at one of his scripts, everything is there. Absolutely everything. He is a brilliant writer. And the prose is all there. You know what he's thinking, you know what the characters are thinking, and so on and so forth. But the very first draft, or even through shooting, the original idea was to kill off Jesse in the pilot, because that just seemed like a good thing to do for the story at the time. And then when they saw how well Aaron and Brian worked together, it was like, you can't kill these people off. You can't. And I remember Kelly Dixon, who is, you've spoken with Kelly too. Kelly was my assistant and just a wonderfully creative person. And the two of us were like, they can't kill Jesse off. Jesse is soul. And I remember, I don't know if it was when Vince got back to the cutting room or if we sent him a note and said, do not kill this guy off. And he'd already been thinking that. I mean, we'd already changed from the idea of, making that a story point to, going forward and just keeping him as a really important part of the story. Wow. That was the biggest surprise. The other surprise was that AMC became incredibly involved in the music. It was the smoothest pilot I'd ever seen, because I hadn't cut a lot of pilots, but I'd assisted on a lot of pilots. And I knew how hard and challenging they could be. And this one was like everybody loved it as soon as they saw it, but they didn't like the temp music. And the temp music became a really, really big deal. And so the woman who was executive at AMC, this was her project, she reached out to Thomas Golubic. And he had done, I think he'd been one of the what was Alan Ball's show? The Death Show.
Oh, that's 6 Feet Under.
Yeah, I think he'd done 6 Feet Under with Alan Ball. And so he had a really good resume for doing quirky shows. And he came up with a score which became, part of the signature of the show that just, it was like icing on the cake. At first, it was a little hard to deal with because we were going in a kind of much more country western kind of music theme, because that's where Vince's head was around it at the time. And then Thomas comes in with all this quirky stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, we can do this. This is fun. That was the biggest surprise. We bumped into music hard, but it worked. So yeah.
As long as it works. It was a great
series,
it worked.
So. It worked great. It worked great.
Now, you talked about Ray Donovan and you did the movie. So what were some of the challenges transitioning from the TV show to the movie? Like, because like you said, trying to get a season into a movie for an audience to wrap things up.
David Hollander, who is the showrunner for Ray Donovan, he was also the writer and the director. And I've worked with him a lot over the last, the run of the show for sure. And earlier, he created The Guardian in 2002, 2000, something like that. And I had worked with him then. So we had a really nice collaboration. So that part made it, that part made it really easy, working with someone who trusted you, who you could joke around with, who had great taste. But the hard thing was trying, because we were dealing with different time periods, was to figure out how not to confuse the audience, but to take us back to times that were his childhood, and then back to times that were like 2 days ago, and then forward into times about, not really forward, but we jump between the present, the near past, and the very distant past. And it was difficult to work that out and not get confused. We probably worked on restructuring. I may have had 15 different versions of the show by the time, and it wasn't the whole show. It was mainly parts of it. Let's pick up this. It wasn't like recutting internal scenes. It was picking things up and moving them. And I think we were all pretty happy with what we ended up with. And hopefully, it satisfied the audience. The thing about Ray Donovan and growing to know your characters is that when you start, getting back to your pilot question for instance, when you start a pilot like Ray Donovan, which Sydney Wolinski cut beautifully, you don't know anybody. Like I said before, you don't know anybody. But 9 years later, when you're doing this movie, you're kind of in love with all the people that are on the show, as bad as they are. You really are in love with them. And I find this is true anytime I start a new show. I don't know the people yet. So the challenge is to try and find the soul of that person and a way to relate to them. Why do we care about them? What makes them charming? What makes them hateful? That sort of thing. And with Ray Donovan, having been there the whole time, the great thing was, I knew those people really, really well. I pretty much knew how they would think, what they would do. So the challenge was there, just giving the audience what they needed to feel happy about the show having a conclusion. And I'd say that was it.
Because as you said, it's sort of set up Linsky set it up in the pilot, but do you still have to do, because it is a feature film and someone might come in and watch it without having seen the show, did you still have to set things up a little bit?
Well, it's interesting. We actually, so weird. It was a movie, but it was for television. So everybody assumed, for the most part, that people will have watched the series by the time they get to wanting to watch this movie a year and a half later. We did have, which is unusual in a movie, we had a recap, a really beautiful art piece done by Miriam Kim, who was one of my two assistants. My other assistant is Susan Godfrey. And Miriam did this thing to a piece of music that David Hollander liked. And it told enough of the story to give people an idea and maybe remind them if they hadn't, if they needed to catch up. And hopefully if people were real interested, they would go back and they would watch some of the series.
Oh, interesting. Now, I would love to know, how do you assess performance in the rushes for your edits? Like, do you rely a lot on the continuity notes and what the director wants, or do you go in and take your own approach?
It depends on the director. If I know the director, I don't usually have to second guess them. I like getting notes from the script super. I like knowing what the director may or may not have in mind. In the past, with some directors and some shows, I found it extremely helpful. With others, as long as I know what the gist is of what they're going for, which hopefully I've been in a tone meeting so I can kind of get a feel. I also make sure that I've seen or read all the scripts up to the point where I'm at, so I kind of can wrap my head around what the characters are doing. And then I just look at the film. I have had disagreement. What a director likes on the day of the shoot doesn't always work in a cut for one reason or another. An actor, does something else with his hands, or he changes a line, or something makes maybe the director's choice unusable. And if you have a director that that trusts you, then you don't have to second guess what you're doing. So I find one of the biggest rules of thumb for me is to go with my gut. If I think that the performance I'm looking at is as good as what the director has picked, I'll give the director what he wants. If I think that there's a problem and that I can't get around using that, I'll make a note as to why, either on the script or on the script facing page, and just say, he walked at the wrong time, he got up at the wrong time, he put his hand on his head at the wrong time, I couldn't use it. So it's possible too that when a director is picking a take as he's shooting, that there's parts of it he likes but not all of it. So I'm not really married to having to use the entire take. I might be able to get what pieces I need from another take and then drop back into the take that the director might prefer. So that's usually how I work. And I've been real lucky to only work on projects that people now trust me, and I don't have to jump through hoops to make them happy usually. I mean, I'm not saying the work isn't just as hard, but that anxiety over whether I'm giving them what they need or this isn't what they wanted isn't there usually anymore. And that is a comfort.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to overcome, I guess, for a lot of younger editors who are just
Well, it is. It is. It's it's hard for any editor if they don't know who they're working with, because chances are you're going to have a really good relationship with them, but it's always possible you'll get someone who either doesn't care for your work, doesn't gel with you, and you hope that since you're only working with them really literally on a television show for 4 days and then you're going off to the producers, that you have a strong enough relationship with the rest of the show that your producer trusts what you've done. You know, I've been in situations where our directors had me gone completely off book as far as what the show is, so that he or she could fulfill their artistic ideas. And, you know, often been asked by the producers, how did you cut it originally? Can we see that? And, you know, on occasion, many occasions, we've gone back to, you know, my first cut, just because I know the show and I know the taste of the producers. And in the end, in a television show, you're not answering the director as much as you're answering the producer. So, you know, you certainly try to make everybody happy, including the director, because that would be a really good thing. And, you know, often they're bringing so much to the project and so much of their heart and hard work that you want them to succeed. So, you know, that kind of tightrope that an editor walks is to make everybody happy. And, you know, hopefully that's what we do.
Now, how did you get involved with American Gigolo?
I'm really not supposed to talk about American Gigolo.
Okay.
The only thing I will say is that David Hollander is the showrunner. So I went with him.
Okay.
They've just asked us not to talk about the project yet, since it's so new.
Of course. So is there a scene or an edit that you've done in your career that you're really proud of, but it was difficult to sort of achieve?
Oh, lots. Lots. It's hard to say. I would say the Ray Donovan project was super hard. The movie, just because of the timestamps.
Yeah.
And I think what we ended up with was really very, very satisfying and very artistically done. You know, I think most people liked it. You know, I did read some reviews of people who thought we were, you know, gilding the lily, but, you know, everybody's got a different opinion. I think what we ended up with was a really beautiful movie and you know, a lot of real solid performances. I don't think you can get a better cast than the cast of Ray Donovan, between Leah Schreiber and John Voight, you know, Dash Mihawk and Pooch and Eddie Marsan, and I mean, just a strong cast. Karis, you know, all of them. They were just, it was delightful to work on that show, even when it was difficult, because you knew the film you were getting was really high quality. So that to me, you know, besides Breaking Bad, of course, which, you know, is a no-brainer, and the X-Files, which I loved. I've just been really very fortunate to work on a lot of real good projects. So it's hard to cast favorites. It's probably easier, you know, to just go, my last one is my favorite, just because, you know, I remember it. Yeah. It's a lot of film to kind of process in your head.
When you mentioned the X-Files, was there a particular episode that you were really proud of that you cut?
Well, you know, I loved the black and white Postmodern Prometheus. I was nominated for that. Actually, we were really lucky that year. X-Files had been overlooked for 4 or 5 years as far as Emmys. Yeah. And the year that I did Postmodern Prometheus, every single editor on the X-Files was nominated for an Emmy, which was pretty astounding. Heather McDougall and Casey Roars were both nominated, and me, for 3 different shows. And usually they say, oh, you'll cancel each other out, but we didn't. And Heather ended up with the Emmy, but I was really proud of Postmodern Prometheus. It was a beautiful, beautiful episode.
I have one last question for you. You know, we've been stuck in this pandemic for quite a while now. Depending on where you are in the world, you're in lockdown or you're in a new wave or you're out. Is there a show or movie that you've discovered on streaming services that people should check out?
Well, I don't think people are going to be surprised by this, but we binged Succession. Oh my God, what a great television show. Yeah. I mean, we binged a lot of really good shows. Every comedy we could think of, we binged. You know, Hacks, Emily in Paris. What else did we binge? Upload. But Succession was just astounding. Just everything about it. It's beautifully done. It's wonderfully edited, and we really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see it again. But yeah, a lot of comedies, just because the nature of what was going on was such a bummer.
Yeah.
I think that we found every good comedy we could possibly find. Only Murders in the Building.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Schmigadoon. I mean, just the whole gambit. Lots of things that we thought we would have time to watch, we didn't. I worked through the entire COVID at home, so
wow.
I was working on Your Honor, and they sent us home in 2020. The week of March 14th, and we didn't finish that project until the following January. Wow. And so I was working at home that entire time, so I didn't have as much time as I could to watch TV. But we did find some good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Nice. And that's it for this week. Make sure to check out filmmakeru.com for all our latest courses. And of course, follow us on Twitter at Filmmaker_U. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.